What happens when a military power spends 40 years building multi-billion-dollar defense systems, only to watch a target worth less than a mid-sized family car bypass all of it? Because that is not a theoretical scenario. That is the exact nightmare that unfolded across the Persian Gulf, over commercial shipping lanes, and around heavily fortified military outposts. For years, Western military strategists operates under a comfortable assumption. They believed that superior technology, stealth aircraft, and advanced radar networks would always guarantee dominance over any adversary. That comfort did not survive the arrival of the drone swarm. Before we step deeper into how this balance of power shattered, do one thing right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. If you want to understand the actual mechanics shaping global conflict, instead of just watching headlines scroll past on your screen, this is where you belong. To understand why Iran's drone strategy felt virtually unbeatable for so long, you have to look at how military engineering used to work. For decades, building air power required immense national wealth. You needed advanced jet engines, highly trained pilots, massive airfields, and complex supply chains. If a country wanted to threaten a major adversary, it had to spend billions of dollars competing in that arena. Iran realized early on that it could never win a symmetrical war against the United States or its regional allies in a traditional dogfight. Instead of trying to match Western air power jet for jet, engineers in Tehran quietly turned to a completely different strategy: asymmetric warfare. They focused on producing cheap, long-range, delta-wing attack drones, most notably the Shahed series. These weapons are not elegant. They do not use expensive stealth coatings, ultra-advanced jet engines, or highly complex sensors. In fact, many of them are powered by basic engine designs that sound more like a lawnmower or a weed trimmer echoing across the night sky than a modern military aircraft. But what they lacked in sophistication, they made up for in raw numbers and sheer simplicity. A single Shahed drone costs somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 to manufacture. It can carry a significant explosive payload over distances stretching hundreds of miles, guided by satellite navigation and basic internal flight controls. By itself, one slow-flying drone is not a major military threat to a modern warship or an advanced air defense battery. Any competent military radar can track it, and almost any surface-to-air missile can shoot it down. But Iranian planners were never planning to send just one. They built their entire tactical doctrine around the concept of swarm saturation. Instead of launching 2 or 3 precision weapons at a target, they began launching waves of dozens, sometimes scores, of low-cost drones simultaneously from mobile truck launchers hidden in remote deserts or coastal roads. When 50 or 60 drones approach a defense network at the same time from multiple angles, the math of modern warfare breaks down instantly. It does not matter how advanced your radar system is, if it is suddenly forced to track 50 separate incoming targets at once. Every defense system on Earth has a physical limit to how many targets it can process, track, and engage simultaneously. Iran had effectively found a way to use cheap mass production to overwhelm high-tech defense infrastructure, creating a threat that appeared, for a long stretch of time, entirely unbeatable. When a military force encounters a new threat on the battlefield, the immediate reaction is almost always to use the weapons already sitting in the inventory. That is precisely what happened across the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and surrounding operational zones. Naval destroyers and land-based air defense batteries locked onto incoming Iranian drone swarms and began launching surface-to-air missiles to intercept them. On paper, the military engagement reports looked like a string of victories. Interceptors were hitting their targets. Drones were exploding mid-air before reaching commercial ships, power stations, or forward operating bases. Military commanders could stand at press podiums and report a high interception success rate. But behind closed doors inside defense headquarters, senior strategists were staring at a set of numbers that looked catastrophic. Because the real danger of Iran's drone strategy was never just the explosives packed inside the nose of a Shahed drone. The real danger was the financial and industrial bleed it forced upon the opposing side. Consider the mathematics sitting at the heart of every single engagement. A standard Iranian attack drone costs around $20,000 to assemble, using readily available, off-the-shelf components. To destroy that single $20,000 drone mid-flight, A naval destroyer or a land battery typically fires a high-end interceptor missile, such as an SM-2, an SM-6, or a Patriot PAC-3 missile. A single one of these interceptors costs anywhere between $2 million and $4 million. Read that comparison again very carefully. A nation spends $4 million in high-tech precision engineering to eliminate a weapon that costs less than the price of a commercial pickup truck. In a short conflict lasting a day or two, a wealthy nation can absorb that financial distortion. But in a sustained, grinding campaign spanning weeks or months, that economic imbalance turns into a strategic trap. Every time an Iranian launcher sends out a wave of 20 cheap drones, it costs Iran roughly $400,000. To clear that single wave out of the sky using conventional surface-to-air missiles cost the defending military upwards of $80 million. Iran was effectively forcing Western militaries to fight a war where defending oneself was mathematically unsustainable over time. And the financial cost was only half the problem. The far more alarming issue was inventory depth. Advanced interceptor missiles are not items sitting on store shelves, ready to be picked up in large quantities overnight. They are extraordinarily complex, hand-assembled precision systems built inside specialized defense facilities. Manufacturing a single Patriot or Standard missile takes months of delicate assembly, testing, and component sourcing. Modern defense factories simply do not have the production capacity to replace hundreds of fired interceptors in a short time frame. As nightly drone attacks continued, naval ships and air defense units were consuming interceptors at a rate far exceeding global factory production. Military commanders faced a horrifying realization. They were running out of arrows faster than they could buy new ones. If a nation burns through its supply of multi-million-dollar interceptors to shoot down lawnmower-powered drones today, what does it use tomorrow if a major adversary launches a full-scale barrage of hypersonic or ballistic missiles? Iran had effectively created a weapon that did not need to hit its target to cause massive strategic damage. It simply had to exist, fly forward, and force the enemy to drain its own irreplaceable stockpiles until nothing was left in reserve. Imagine standing on the deck of a multi-billion-dollar warship in the middle of the night. On the radar screen, dozens of tiny red dots are moving toward you at 200 miles an hour. It is a drone swarm, launched from a coastline hidden miles away in the dark. The ship's alarms are sounding, but instead of launching multi-million-dollar missiles into the sky, no one presses the missile launch button. Instead, an operator sits quietly in a control room, flips a single switch, and points an invisible beam into the night air. There are no loud explosions, no bright trails of fire streaking across the clouds, and no smoke. Yet, within 3 seconds, every single drone in that incoming swarm stops spinning, loses power, and falls straight into the ocean like heavy stones. This is not science fiction. This is the exact technological shift that quietly changed the balance of power across the Persian Gulf. For months, military planners knew they could not keep firing $4 million missiles at $20,000 drones. They needed a solution that broke the math of swarm warfare entirely. They needed a weapon with an endless magazine, a weapon that could strike 50 targets at once, and a weapon where every single shot cost less than a cup of coffee. That search led straight to a technology that had been hidden deep inside advanced defense laboratories for over a decade: high-power microwave systems and directed energy weapons. To understand why this technological shift felt like magic to commanders on the ground, you first have to understand how a Shahed drone actually operates inside a swarm. These cheap attack drones rely entirely on sensitive electronic circuit boards, small GPS receivers, internal wiring, and digital flight controllers to stay in the air. Without those delicate electronic parts working in perfect harmony, a drone is nothing more than a useless piece of plastic and metal holding fuel and explosives. Conventional air defense weapons try to physically smash into the drone using metal shrapnel and hot explosive force. That requires hitting a moving object directly in mid-air, which is hard, expensive, and requires perfect guidance. Directed energy systems, like high-power microwave weapons, take a completely different approach. Instead of throwing metal at metal, they throw massive bursts of concentrated electromagnetic energy through the air at the speed of light. When a high-power microwave weapon fires, it releases a wide, invisible beam of high-frequency energy into the sky. As that beam passes through an incoming drone swarm, the electromagnetic energy travels straight through the plastic or fiberglass shell of the drones and hits the internal wiring inside. It instantly overloads the delicate electronic circuit boards with thousands of volts of electricity, cooking the chips and frying the wiring in a fraction of a millisecond. It is the exact same effect as dropping a smartphone into a hot microwave oven, but stretched across miles of open air. The engine dies instantly, the flight computer turns off, and the drone simply drops out of the sky. But the most terrifying part of this technology for any adversary using swarm tactics is not just that it works. It is how fast it works against large numbers. A traditional missile can only hit one target at a time. A high-power microwave system does not care if there is one drone in the sky or 50 drones flying in a tight formation. Because its energy beam spreads out in a wide cone, it hits every single electronic device in its path simultaneously. A single burst, lasting less than 2 seconds, can wipe out an entire incoming swarm in midair, neutralizing an attack that cost the enemy hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single blink of an eye. When you look at modern directed energy systems, like the US military's Leonidas, or mobile high-power microwave rigs, you do not see a massive cannon or a giant missile launcher. You see what looks like a simple metal container mounted on the back of a tactical trailer or a naval flatbed. But inside that quiet metal housing sits an engineering breakthrough that completely changes how defense works. For years, directed energy weapons were trapped inside research facilities because they required immense amounts of electrical power, heavy cooling units, and massive generators that no battlefield vehicle or warship could easily carry. The engineering breakthrough was not just making microwaves powerful, it was making them compact, mobile, and instant. To really get why this changes everything on the water and in the desert, you have to look at the financial math behind every shot. As we saw earlier, firing a conventional surface-to-air missile burns through millions of dollars in a matter of seconds. Once a warship fires all the missile canisters packed into its vertical launch tubes, it is completely out of ammo. It has to leave the combat zone, sail back to a specialized port, and spend days reloading heavy missiles under crane supervision. That ship is effectively out of the fight while it reloads. A high-power microwave system completely deletes that vulnerability. It runs on electricity pulled directly from a ship's power plant or a mobile tactical generator. That means as long as the engine has fuel or power, the weapon has ammo. It has an endless magazine. It never runs out of shots, never needs to reload under a crane, and never needs to leave its patrol station. And the cost per shot? While a Patriot missile costs $4 million per launch, a single high-power microwave burst costs roughly $1 to $3 in electrical power. That is not a minor discount. That is taking an enemy's primary strategic advantage and completely flipping it on its head. Before we move into how this technology is shifting the entire global map, tap that like button right now if you are seeing how deep this game really goes. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these complete breakdowns, and drop a comment below telling me if you think drone swarms are officially finished, or if military technology will find another way around this invisible wall. The secret to why this system works so well against Iranian drone swarms comes down to how it connects with modern radar networks. In older defense setups, every weapon operated on its own isolated sensor. A radar would spot a drone, send the location to a computer, and a crew would aim a single weapon at that single point. That process is far too slow when 60 drones are diving toward a target from 3 different directions at once. The new directed energy systems are linked directly into integrated battlefield networks. High-resolution radar arrays track incoming swarms miles away, calculating the precise speed, altitude, and spread of the formation. That data is fed instantly into automated fire control computers. The system does not wait for a human operator to track each drone manually. It automatically aims the high-power microwave array, calculates the exact spread needed to catch every signal in the formation, and releases a series of high-frequency pulses across the target area in milliseconds. The result is a silent, invisible wall standing around coastal ports, naval fleets, and forward operating bases. Iranian drone swarms that once looked unstoppable because of sheer numbers now fly straight into an invisible field of electromagnetic energy. The moment they cross that line, their flight controls die, their engines shut off, and dozens of attack drones drop out of the sky together, without a single missile being fired into the air. What happens when a nation spends 40 years building its entire defense strategy around a single weapon, only to discover that the world built an invisible wall against it overnight? Because that is the cold, uncomfortable reality sitting in front of leadership in Tehran right now. For decades, Iran treated its massive stockpiles of low-cost Shahed drones like an unbeatable bargaining chip. Every time tensions rose in the Persian Gulf, every time Western sanctions tightened, or every time diplomatic talks hit a wall, the message from Tehran was always the same. We can flood the skies with hundreds of cheap attack drones. We can overwhelm your multi-billion-dollar fleets, paralyze commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and make any conflict far too expensive for you to sustain. That leverage worked for a long time. It worked because Western militaries were trapped in an expensive cycle, using $4 million interceptors to shoot down $20,000 flying lawnmowers. But the deployment of directed energy and high-power microwave systems completely shattered that strategy. When you strip away the propaganda videos and the loud statements from state media, the actual balance of power on the water has shifted dramatically. The cheap drone swarms that once held global energy routes hostage are no longer guaranteed to reach their targets. When an entire formation of 50 drones can be wiped out of the sky in 3 seconds for the price of $3 in electricity, the fundamental math of asymmetric warfare breaks down. The attacker is no longer forcing the defender to bleed money and drain missile stockpiles. Instead, the attacker is burning through cash and manufacturing time to produce drones that fall harmlessly into the sea without firing a single shot back. This technological shift does not just change one waterway in the Middle East. It changes the future of global conflict entirely. Military planners in countries like China, Russia, and North Korea have watched this confrontation unfold with extreme focus. For years, every major power assumed that low-cost drone swarms were the ultimate cheat code to defeat advanced Western militaries without spending billions on stealth fighters or heavy warships. Now, every general and defense engineer on Earth is being forced back to the drawing board. They are realizing that the era of simple, cheap, unarmored drone swarms dominating the battlefield was just a brief window in military history. The race is already shifting to the next chapter. Defense engineers are now scrambling to design drones shielded against electromagnetic pulses, drones that use fiber optic cables instead of wireless signals, or swarms that fly at supersonic speeds to minimize exposure time inside the microwave zone. But shielding every cheap drone with heavy, expensive materials destroys the main advantage that made them dangerous in the first place: being cheap and easy to mass produce. As soon as you make a drone heavy, complex, and expensive to survive directed energy, you are no longer playing the asymmetric numbers game. You are right back to building traditional, expensive military hardware. The invisible wall deployed in the Persian Gulf did not just stop incoming swarms over a narrow strip of water. It quietly proved that no single weapon system stays unbeatable forever. In the eternal chess match between hiding, attacking, and defending, the side that controls energy controls the future of the sky. If this deep breakdown helped you actually understand how modern military technology is reshaping our world, instead of just watching headlines scroll past, hit subscribe right now, share this video with someone who loves deep geopolitical strategy, and I will see you in the next